Again, we had a reversal bar with after our topping tail, but bars are still blue. The trend is still hanging in there as blue at the moment here. No topping signal up here. We had them back over here and over here just before that peak, and we had the bottoming signal here. We don't have anything here. So again, Bitcoin likely in wave 3 in my opinion. Now, momentum is still bearish for Bitcoin. We did get this topping signal for short-term momentum. These signals over here after our topping tail. Again, here we have a shaded area telling us that a squeeze move is getting ready to happen. Could take its time though. The Bollinger Bands are really tightening. If you'll watch the video all the way through, you'll see that. Something big is getting ready to happen. Even though we've gone sideways, the balance of power is still positive. We have a bull flag. We could go to the lower end of the bull flag and still get a bigger pullback. That's the support levels I'm talking about, but we're consolidating sideways, much like what we had over here. This is just smaller, forming a bull flag as well. Momentum still bearish. In order to resume the advance, we got to flip momentum back to bullish. Remains bearish. We can get a bigger pullback. Still forming a bull flag at this point. See that in the daily time frame in this video. But we're just going sideways. Signals are going from bullish back to bearish. Got to break out of this trading range to resume the advance. If we remain in it, the risk is that we go back down and test the lower boundary of the bull flag or the resistance zone turn support. Here, momentum trying to turn bearish. The trend is still hanging in there. We'll be watching to see if we get that bigger pullback or not. We had that topping signal with our topping tail. Doesn't tell us if it's a major top or it's going to give us a smaller pullback. So far we pulled back and we've gone sideways. We're finding support here at the orange line. If we lose it, then the purple line comes into play, and that would take us moving towards 112,000 area, which is again the resistance zone, turn support 110 to 112,000. May not reach it. If we lose the orange line, we can move towards it, towards the lower boundary of the bull flag. So again, I'm watching as we're tagging this level right here. Do we bounce and break out of the bull flag, or is it still under construction? I did get a warning sign with yesterday's closing bar there, that we had a gray bar of a possible pullback. Right now, as the session is going on, we're trying to flip the bar to red, and we're dropping below the cloud. If we close that way by the end of the session, if we close in weakness, then you could get a bigger pullback. Again, we have the bull flag, test the lower boundary, or some of these other support levels that I'm talking about, testing the trend line of the inverse head and shoulders, and so on and so forth. The resistance zone turn support. Levels of support I've been talking about. So right here, we're trying to flip the signal to bearish, but we have several hours left before the close. And if Powell ends up resigning, that could rattle markets. Along with Trump's tariffs before the end of the week, we're likely going to get a sell-off in July. We've already seen sell-offs with Bitcoin as they've had periods of short-term decoupling over here. And then here, do we see decoupling continue? Does Bitcoin end up going higher while the market corrects? Does it end up getting a bigger sell-off? Certainly going to be interesting to watch, because we have had these short periods of decoupling after they bottomed together. Bitcoin corrected while the stock market continued higher. Stock markets had minor pullbacks where Bitcoin has had this 12% drop and now this drop over here as we've had these short periods of decoupling. Just know that this signal, we have bearish momentum right now, and we now have this signal trying to flip, but it won't be final until the end of the session. As I'm making the video, again, Bitcoin is down. We're trying to flip some of the signals here. We're trying to flip to a red bar. Again, could we get a back test of this neckline from the inverse head and shoulders? Again, slightly excluding the shadow here, connecting the peak in December to the May 22nd peak. Do we get a bigger pullback here? Maybe. Getting a larger bull flag setting up into that trend line, certainly possible. But again, the bar trying to flip to red here. In this bull flag, we had it happen a couple of times. Again, over here after we bottomed, bars turned blue and we trended higher. Over here at the peak, bars flipped red and we went lower. So again, I programmed my own indicators, programmed it here to look for the trend. Red bars going down, blue bars going up, and then when it goes back and forth, it goes back and forth sideways. And again, right now we've had the blue bars. Now they're trying to flip red. Again, that won't be final until the close of the session. Just to be aware, we could get a bigger pullback with Bitcoin. The channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. If you follow the link below, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want. I just do that instead of getting sponsors. Most YouTube channels get sponsors. I don't want to sell you anything, but if you could take a moment to partner with me, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your consideration for that. Here, again, we do have possibly confirmation of a lower high. We're going sideways, but if we do get a further breakdown, again, you could better define that bull flag. It could take us into the cloud right here, just beyond the cloud. Right now, coming in near the 113,000 area. Horizontal support at 112,000. So again, just something worth paying attention to if we end up getting a bigger sell-off to better define that bull flag. But we know the tightening of the Bollinger Bands is happening. It's telling us a big move is about to happen on Bitcoin. And sometimes before the big moves, you start going in the opposite direction first. Doesn't always play out that way, but it very well could if we are in wave 3. Last video, I talked about the longer-term target rates for Bitcoin. I talked about the inverse head and shoulder breakout and the measurement, which is this line right here, taking us up towards 171,000 area. The 171,000 area is our 1.618 expansion from the previous advance. Talked about the inverse head and shoulders breakout, possible back test here. Maybe it's not done. The Bollinger Bands are tightening, telling us a squeeze move up or down is about to happen. Regardless of whether we get a bigger pullback eventually, I think these Fibonacci extension levels are where we're headed. Talked about this in great length of detail in our last update. The price of Bitcoin right now is down 0.31%. Bitcoin is down at the moment. A recent minor low is holding. Is that move done? We've got a bull flag. We've got a sideways consolidation in a bull flag, which you'll see up close on the chart in a moment. We're halting at our 78.6 Fibonacci extension level after breaking through the 61.8 fib right here. We broke through it. We stalled at the 78.6 fib. If we can clear this level with the bull flag, we can head towards 134,000, which is the next Fibonacci extension level, which is a 1-to-1 of the previous advance. So right now we're stalling at that Fibonacci. Pretty amazing though how we stall. We consolidated under the 61.8 fib here. Now we're consolidating underneath the 78.6 fib. If you can clear it, then again our 1-to-1. Eventually I think we're going up here towards the 1.38, which is at 157,000. That's where dollar for dollar the measurement of the pattern is, but if we just take it, you can measure it two ways, dollar for dollar, subtracting the low from the high over here, and that would take us towards 156, 157,000. If we just take the line right here, then it's up closer to our 1.618 expansion. So this is where I think we're likely headed towards the 1.38 at 157,000 to this 1.618 at 171,000. Now, I talked about the other target being the 175,000 area, which is very close to this 1.618 expansion. I talked about that in the last update. So, talked about these longer-term measurements, the breakout of the bull pattern here. The bullish pattern is the inverse head and shoulders pattern. Now, that 1.618 expansion level at 171,500 or so is very close to this 175,000 area here. Actually, 174,750, that range right in there, just under 175,000. Very, very close to this level. This is the Fibonacci extension from the previous decline. The other one was from the previous advance. I've done both of them. And again, very similar situation over here. When we went to go break to new highs from the previous decline, the bear market at 84% there after the 2017 peak, we stalled at the 1.38 to expansion from the previous decline. That's exactly what we've done here. We've come up and we've stalled right at the 1.382. They're at just 122,000. We hit 123,000 just right above that level installed. And that's what we did over here. We just moved right above it and we stalled. But then we broke above it. We blew past the 1.5 expansion and we went all the way up to the 1.618 level, which is where I think we're likely headed. That is in harmony with my upper boundary of the channel, and that would take us towards the 175,000 area, 174,759 to be exact, and we could reach level and slightly overthrow it as we did over here, reach the upper channel line, and that could take us above 175,000. As I've said, it could take us towards 180, 185,000, 190,000, depending on how long we take to reach this upper boundary. So covered all of this, went into great length and detail. I'm just doing a quick review of it here. We covered the extension levels. We do reach my upper channel line. Again, I'm looking at 171,000, 175,000. If we reach it sooner, then maybe that target will be lower. Again, a number is not my target. A day is not my target. This trend line is my target level. I'm just telling you that these extension levels are in harmony with my upper channel, and I'm telling you why I think this is where I think we're eventually headed to Bitcoin, for Bitcoin, over the next couple of months. Now, Bitcoin could be at this level, this 150,000 to 175,000 level by September or October. When we hit the 1.38 extension level of the previous decline, we went down for a couple of weeks, and then we just started going sharply higher up to that 161 expansion over the next 12 weeks. And again, if we see the same thing happen here, well, we could see something similar to this that could take us on into September or October if we see something very similar to this over the next several weeks, meaning that Bitcoin could peak in the next couple of months up at these levels, up at my channel line. So just keep that in mind, because when we broke through the 1.382, there it is, extension level, we just soared quickly up to the 1.618, and we could see something very similar to that here. We'll be watching this closely. Slightly lower today on the Tuesday session. We have this bull flag, okay, and I previously drew the upper boundary from this peak over here. We had a breakout, but that breakout kind of failed. And from the highs here, with this high, if we draw a parallel boundary from the low here and the low here to the low here to the low here, you got a pretty good looking bull flag pattern. So I redrew it, but you can clearly see we're going sideways. Look at this. From the upper boundary here, we had that topping tail, but from the close right there, tried to get above it a couple times on an intraday basis, but look at this. We're just going sideways, and we're getting rejection there at that level, 120,000 area there. And then down here, look at this. We have, again, some support levels, or we can even exclude some of the shadows and go up a little bit higher. But you've got this sideways range that's forming this bull flag. Do you see this? But look what's happening. Look at the Bollinger Bands. The lower band, the upper band. This is telling us a squeeze move is about to happen. Now, that could be that we drop down below the lower band and come to the lower boundary here. Again, we've talked about coming closer to this level and then resuming and finishing this bull flag in a back test that comes closer to the resistance zone, now turns support, closer to our 50-period moving average. Certainly possible. But it could also mean the tightening of the bands, that we see an upward resolution as well. A squeeze move up or down is coming. And again, if we get an upward resolution, again, we can resume the advance. And again, I believe that we're likely in wave 3, primary wave 3, in these smaller waves in primary wave 3 from our low back over here, as I've talked about. But the tightening of the bands, look at how tight they're getting. This is telling us something's getting ready to happen. Now, the RSI is still in positive territory. We had this negative divergence. Right here, I've marked it. Again, the RSI doesn't look at the shadow here. So, again, this was slightly higher than this level on a closing basis, and that gave us this divergence. If we see the RSI drop into negative territory, we get a bigger pullback, and then I'd be watching this lower boundary right here. We get an upward resolution, a breakout. Then we need to be able to clear this horizontal trading range above here and then go back up and be able to test the topping tail up here that we had there in mid-July. Does the RSI go negative and we get a bigger dump, or do we turn up? And again, in long-term bullish on Bitcoin, right now it's just getting a pullback after a breakout. We broke out and it's getting this pullback and it's consolidating. Look at the sideways move over here. Again, from our May 22nd peak, we dropped 12% and we went sideways, and then we saw that breakout. Be back tested? Sure. This low right here, we are hitting the trend line from the previous highs, which you can see right here. Again, the December and the January top, if we take that trend line, it's coming up here. That's where we're finding the support. If we exclude the shadow, we just drop slightly below it. If we lose this area, then you have the trend line right here connecting this high, slightly excluding the shadow here, and connecting the May 22nd peak, which is just a little bit lower. And that could be near that lower boundary of our bull flag. If we lose that area, again, our resistance zone, the 110 to 112,000 area, is resistance turned support now, so that's support directly underneath there. So I'm looking at these three areas. Right now we're trying to bounce off this trend line from the previous highs. So again, if we can get an upward resolution, you'll have a breakout of a bull flag. If you get a downward resolution, you could test the lower boundary of the bull flag, and maybe these other support levels, this trend line right here, would take us towards that lower boundary of the bull flag. As you can see right there, we would end up moving back to test that lower boundary again and test this trend line from the high here to the high from the May 22nd peak. So again, our inverse head and shoulders pattern, likely having a breakout and a back test or a throwback. If we don't reach the trend line here, another bull flag developing just like we had back over here. So we'll be watching to see if that gives us an upward resolution eventually. And again, the tightening of the Bollinger Bands could give us an upward resolution. I think even if we get a bigger pullback, we'll eventually move higher. I remain long-term bullish on Bitcoin, but the tightening of the bands are telling us something's getting ready to happen. Bitcoin at the moment, as I'm making the video, down 0.40% at the moment, almost $500. Watching the moving averages here, the 10, we're kind of going flatline there. We're now trying to take out the 20 period, the blue line. If they get a bearish cross, again, we can get a bigger sell-off against horizontal support and this lower boundary. Trend line I just showed you on the other chart. If we get an upward resolution, then the advance can resume. Remember, we're stalling at the 78.6 Fibonacci in the chart I showed you, the extension Fibonacci levels. And if we can clear that level, we can clear that Fibonacci resistance level as well. Back down further and test the lower boundary of the bull flag. You're going to be running right into the 200 period moving average here on the 4-hour chart. That's certainly possible, and we could go down there and then have the Bollinger Band still play out and give us an upward resolution. Sometimes you go in the opposite direction, but you're about to move into the Bollinger Bands. We've seen that happen over and over again with Bitcoin in the daily time frame. It's happened quite a bit, but again, I'm marking this here, and this is our 4-hour chart, as completing our rally into the 112,000 area. Wave 1, marking this as a corrective move for wave 2, primary wave 2, and that we're in primary wave 3. And we have these smaller waves, these smaller microwaves, if you will. I've marked this as intermediate wave 1, intermediate wave 2, and we're now possibly in intermediate wave 3, which I've marked up here, that's unfolding in 5 waves with these 5 minor waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, and possibly 5. Get an upward resolution. This is where I think we're going for the short term. It would take us above this peak over here at 123,000. So again, I'm marking this as primary wave 2, and this with these subwaves in primary wave 3. Let me show you on the daily chart and show you a little bit further out. This is just the 4-hour time frame. Now keep in mind the 50 is still above the 200 period. Even if we come back here, the 50 is still above the 200. This is still above the 200 at the moment. So again, we'll see if we can get an upward resolution to our bull flag. The last one, we did get an upward resolution to, gave us a breakout of the inverse head and shoulders, Could this be a back test of that move? This trend line right here, and if it breaks, then the 200 period comes into play, the lower boundary of the bull flag comes into play, and our key support levels. So again, if we can break out, get an upward resolution to the bull flag, you might try to bounce off this trend line, but right now we are testing it. So again, we'll be watching to see if we get that bigger pullback or not. Regardless, we're likely in wave 3 for Bitcoin, and it could be consolidating or getting this larger bull flag setting up to end up going higher. Here, and look at the Elliott wave count in the daily time frame. Then I'll quickly show you the Elliott wave in the weekly as we've been watching. The daily, again, I've marked this as the completing of wave 4 for our cycle, wave 3, wave 4, and then we're going to complete the cycle top here with wave 5. Wave 5 is unfolding in 5 primary waves, as I've marked right here. Now, wave 1, back at 74,000, when everybody was saying we were going to crash, all season was canceled and it was over and there was no hope. I called the day of the bottom and predicted this rally to new highs. We got it. Not done yet. I think we're going much higher. Sharing with you my Fibonacci extension levels, my Elliott wave count, my longer term channel. I think this is where we're headed in the next few months. And then I think Bitcoin's going to top. I'm very bullish now, being that from 74,000, we're getting the final phase of the blow off top, the final climax move. When we get up here, nobody's going to think it's a top. The herd is going to do what they normally do and just be super bullish. Form the top. The Moon Boys are going to do what they did back in 2021 and tell us we're just getting started. Coin will top and begin to tank, and it will lose in a few months 50% like it did back in 2021, about 52% in a couple of months. The same thing here. We're headed to recession. The recession indicators are already flashing. We know this. So Bitcoin is in a topping process, but I am very bullish, believing that we're going to go up here probably the Fibonacci extension levels I've talked about between 150,000 to 175, be even higher. Maybe, like I said, overthrowing the Fibonacci extension levels and going up into the upper channel line, maybe towards 180, 185, 190,000 or so. So I believe that we're likely in wave 3 with the breakout of the inverse head and shoulders pattern. Again, measurement of the previous advance would take us up into this area here, which would be moving closer towards 150,000. If we continue the advance or backtest the trend line and then continue the advance, I would think that we would have a similar measurement to the wave 1 or maybe even beyond it, as I've marked right here. So I've marked this as the primary wave 3, primary wave 4, and then primary wave 5. And this can conclude September, as I've marked here, or on into October if we take our time. This is what I think is happening. Let me show you this count with the bigger picture with our weekly chart. And here it is, and it can look something like this. And again, this could drag out into October possibly. Here I've marked it going into September here. But again, this is the trend line where I think we're headed. I think we're likely in the wave 3, and eventually I think you're going to see these 5 waves complete, 5 primary waves to complete the cycle top. Again, the red count there, you can see marked here in red Roman numerals. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So this is what I think is going on. This is why I remain very, very bullish longer term on Bitcoin. I think it will conclude in a few months once we reach this level. We may fall short of this level. We did fall short of it down here, as I've mentioned over here. We never did reach that lower boundary of this channel, but I think that this is likely where we're going. We could fall short of the upper channel, certainly possible, but we could just as easily reach it. Right now, we're stalling at the trend line on the linear scaling. We're stalling at it. If we can clear the trend line from the 2017 high, I'll just show it to you quickly in a second, we can get up into these levels that I'm talking about, are Fibonacci extension levels, but you got to be able to clear that trend line from 2017. Here's our log scaling in the weekly time frame. This is where I think we're headed. Look at the linear scaling. And I talked about when we were up at the highs, how we were slamming into this trend line right here, going back to 2017. This is our linear scaling in the weekly time frame. And we broke through this trend line right here from 2017 to the 2021 peaks, excluding the shadows from the first 2021 peak, hitting it in the trend line once again in 2024 in December, and then January of 2025. That gave us a sell-off of 32%. We've rebounded. We hit the May peak, and then we soared above this level, but then we stalled at this trend line right here from 2017 to the first peak in 2021, and we slammed into it. We got a topping tail, and that's where we're stalling. If we can continue higher, you got to be able to clear that trend line to continue the advance. It was this trend line that helped me call the December and the January top there. Our previous tops over here, it's halted this advance, this other trend line. We'll see if we can eventually try to clear it. If you can, then you can go to the upper channel in the weekly time frame with our log scaling that I just showed you. Dropping a little bit more. Now it's down 0.55%. Again, losing that 20-period moving average. The tightening of the Bollinger Band is telling us something big is going to happen. Even if we end up getting a bigger drop down to these levels I'm talking about, we could still see a breakout of the bull flag. Again, sometimes with the tightening of the bands, you go in the other direction first. Not always, but sometimes you go in the other direction first, and then you end up turning back up. So we could see something like that happen to complete this bull flag. We'll be watching which way we break with the tightening of the Bollinger Bands, but it is telling us something's about to happen. A big move is coming on Bitcoin. Now, one other thing about my long-term targets with Bitcoin, if we look at the standard deviations from a Bitcoin's average price, that's this line right here. Again, we bounced up Bitcoin's average price here. We bounced off of it over here. We were just above it over here. We pulled back to it through the advance a couple of times, and it's acted as support. Bounced off of it, got back above the 100-period moving average right there and the pink line. And stalling, though, at the Fibonacci deviation, standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price. Right now we've stalled here at the yellow line. We're stalling at the 1.382 Fibonacci expansion from Bitcoin's average price. We stalled there. We stalled here again at it. We got to be able to clear that level. If we get above that level, then you can go up to the green line right here. That is the 1.618 expansion, I should say, from Bitcoin's average price. That's the green line. We stalled at it over here previously at the December and the January highs. We stalled near that level. Back at high in early 2024, we were breaking out above the previous peak, above 69,000. We had broken to a new high. We stalled at the 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price, which is the red line right there. And that's where I think we're likely headed. We've got to eventually be able to clear the yellow line, which is the 1.382 standard deviation above Bitcoin's average price. If we can clear that, then you go to the 1.618 standard deviation above Bitcoin's average price. That would take us up in towards the 150,000 area. If we can clear that, then I think that this red line, the 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price, could be where we're headed. And guess what? Pika stinkin' boo. That's very, very close to our upper channel line. It's very close to our Fibonacci extension levels, currently coming in at about 178,000. I have a lot of Fibonacci levels pointing towards the 175,000 area or so, 171,000. The Fibonacci extensions from the previous high, the Fibonacci extensions from the previous sell-off, 175,000 here, and our 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price. We're looking at about 178,000. So again, at our upper channel line. So there's a lot of things pointing up to that area. Bitcoin peaked with the first peak in 2021. We were going parabolic, and we were riding above 3 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price, and we peaked, but we were riding above it consistently, and finally we peaked and we began to turn off of it. Back to Bitcoin's average price, we rose back up, and we went back up to the green line there. That's where we peaked and we topped out in 2021, and that was at the 1.618 expansion, the extension level from Bitcoin's average price. That's where we topped. So the 3 standard deviations over here, Might be harder for Bitcoin to reach, more likely to top at the 1.618 extension level or 2 standard deviations above the Bitcoin average price, much like what we tagged over here when we first broke out above the high. Now, another thing I want to say here is as long as we're above Bitcoin's average price, the bull market can continue. The Bitcoin average price and being above the 100 period moving average, good things are happening. But you start losing the 100 like we did over here and then dropping below Bitcoin's average price. We tried to bounce off of it. It failed after over here bouncing off of it, bouncing. Here we tried to bounce and it ended up failing, and then it acted as resistance, and you held below Bitcoin's average price, and eventually the 100 period dropped below Bitcoin's average price, and again, bad stuff happened. You dropped 78%. Here you got above Bitcoin's average price, consolidated, tried to bounce just above it here, rose, hit 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price, went back to Bitcoin's average price, bounced, went up to the 1618 above expansion level, Bitcoin's average price, went back to Bitcoin's average price right here. And again, as long as we hold above those levels, the long-term advance can continue. It's when you start losing those levels. But over here, we quickly dropped 52%, losing those levels very quickly in just a couple of months to kick off this bear phase. Be aware of that. I'm showing you this because we need to clear these levels. And notice how we're stalling at the 1.382 Fibonacci expansion level of Bitcoin's average price. We're stalling there, much like we're stalling at some of these other Fibonacci's I'm showing you in this video. Again, this is where I think Bitcoin is likely headed. Probably it will top at the green line or this red line, which is, again, the 1618 extension level from Bitcoin's average price here. That'd be about the 150,000. And again, these are still rising, so keep that in mind as well. They can go higher. But right here, the Fibonacci 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price, which is where we stalled out over here. And we can quickly get there. Look how quick we got. We just had this move right here. Look how quickly that happened. We could see this happen very, very quickly, moving up to one of these lines right here. But again, the 150,000, 175,000 area is, I think, reasonable target for Bitcoin. Channel here with Bitcoin, and this is a daily time frame. Normally, I exclude the shadows and so forth in the weekly time frame. But if you bring it up here in the daily time frame, the upper boundary of my channel is coming very close to this upper 2 standard deviations above Bitcoin's average price. So again, just a lot of levels pointing to this upper boundary. Now, this can change. As I said, Bitcoin could rise up here very quickly, much like what we had over here towards this area. So just something to be paying attention to.